Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is the 1st of June 2022. The 6th month of the year is upon us. Lots of stories to discuss with you. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, with the 118th meeting of the Pakistan-India Permanent Indus Commission that was held in New Delhi in India from the 30th to the 31st of May. What was discussed during this meeting? Was there some compliance between the Pakistani and the Indian side as far as the different issues that Pakistan is going through are concerned, especially the construction of dams that India has made? Is India relenting to show all the different constructions that it has made over the different dams on the waters that are located within India? That and more will be discussed during our first segment. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and extrajudicial killings. Now, around 609 innocent Kashmiris have so far been martyred by the Indian occupation forces since the abrogation of Articles 370 and 35A by the Indian authorities. This and more will be discussed as far as the Indian held valley is concerned in our second story. Our third story concerns four Pakistani individuals who are below 30 years of age who have made the nation proud by bagging a spot on the Forbes 30 under 30. These four people belong to four different organizations, and they are making a mark not only for themselves but also for Pakistan. And our final story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the Global Day of Parents. Today is the day where we need to honor the parents more, and I feel we need to honor them every day of every month of every year. Nevertheless, the theme for Global Parents Day 2022 is appreciate all parents throughout the world. We need to be appreciative of them as they have been behind our backs and always supported us throughout our lives. Let's begin with our first segment, and that concerns the 118th meeting of the Pakistan-India Permanent Indus Commission that was held in New Delhi from the 30th to the 31st of last month. What was discussed? What was the outcome? More in the following report.
The impending water scarcity in Pakistan against the backdrop of blistering heat wave and novel climate-induced challenges illustrate a ticking time bomb. In order to manage subcontinent's water woes, a 5-member Pakistani delegation led by Indus Water Commissioner Meher Ali Shah left for India via Wagah border to discuss issues pertaining to sharing of water resources under the Indus Water Agreement. Indus Water Commissioner Meher Ali Shah emphasized the resolution of water issues in bilateral manner while elaborating that the talks are a part of treaty obligation that we have to fulfill under the Indus Water Treaty. The Pakistani delegation raised objections over Indian hydroelectric projects on western rivers and sought explanation over Pakaldal and other contentious water projects from India. The 118th bilateral meeting on Indus Water Treaty also deliberated upon the annual report of Permanent Commission of Indus Waters. Earlier, both countries held 3-day talks in Islamabad on 2nd of March 2022, and the next session of talks over water issues will be held in Pakistan. It is pertinent to mention here that Pakistan has objections over India's 3 mega hydel projects on River Chenab. Pakistan has always insisted on the implementation of the Indus Waters Treaty and raised its voice on India's behavior in a timely manner.
Now, to discuss more on this very important issue, we've been joined by Rafay. He's an environment lawyer, member Hisar Foundation, that is a think tank that talks on the rational use of water. Rafay Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. Ahmad Rafay, when it comes to this 118th meeting of Pakistan-India Permanent Indus Commission, how important do you feel it was as far as the different issues that concern water and Pakistan? And do you feel that India is relenting to listen to these issues, to take some tangible steps as far as the resolution of these issues is concerned?
Well, under the Indus Water Treaty, there is a permanent Indus Commission that consists of a Pakistani representative and an Indian representative. And under the treaty, this commission is supposed to meet at least once a year. And because of political tensions between India and Pakistan, talks of the Indus Water Commission had been halted. And so the 117th meeting that was held in early March was a sort of resumption of treaty talks, which was actually taken as a positive step between the two bilateral relations of the countries. Now, that said, the Indus Water Treaty deals with how we divide the major tributaries of the Indus River. The Indus has 5 tributaries, and the 6 rivers of the Indus Basin are divided, therefore, by the Indus Treaty, with 3 of the western rivers, that's the Indus, the Jhelum, and the Chenab, belonging to Pakistan, so to speak, with certain restrictions. And the 3 eastern rivers, that is the Ravi, the Beas, and the Sutlej, their waters allocated to India. Now, the treaty itself does not deal with all of the water issues in Pakistan, mostly because the Indus Basin and its 6 rivers are not the only water source in Pakistan. The Indus, in fact, has as many as more than 20 tributaries, including the Kabul River, and nearly half of the water used in irrigation in Pakistan comes from the ground. That said, it's very important for the Indus Water Commission to share information about plans India may have to construct hydropower projects on the western rivers. The Indus Water Treaty gives India permission to use the waters of the western rivers for domestic purposes and for irrigation purposes. But do remember that the steep valleys that these 3 rivers pass through do not allow for much irrigation or even many settlements. So there's not much water that's used that way. That said, the treaty does allow India to build certain types of hydropower stations. Those are dams, but very importantly, they're run-of-the-river dams that can't store water. So with these 3 exceptions, India is allowed to have infrastructure development on the western rivers, provided it gives information about these rivers to Pakistan in a timely fashion. And if Pakistan feels that the design of any of these rivers is in conflict with the Indus Water Treaty and its mandate to let water flow in the western rivers, then it can object to those before the forums of a neutral expert or even the International Court of Arbitration. I might say that throughout its life, the Indus Water Treaty has been complied with by both countries, including dispute settlements, which means that so far, one can't really accuse either one of the countries of violating the treaty, because thus far, both countries have followed its terms and abided by its dispute resolution mechanisms.
All right. Now, you're talking of dispute resolution mechanism. Let's also talk about the hydroelectric constructions on the western rivers by India. And let's talk about Pakal Dul Dam. That is a bone of contention as far as Pakistan is concerned. Do you feel India might relent to what Pakistan is asking for as far as this dam is concerned? It wants to go and see what this dam is all about, and also make India understand that the water needs to flow as it has been flowing in the past.
I think it's a welcome measure that the Indian Indus Commissioner invited his Pakistani counterpart to India to inspect the site of the dams that Pakistan had questions over. And hopefully, India will, in this spirit of bilateralism, trade transparent information with Pakistan, who can then examine the design of the dam against the parameters set by the treaty and what is allowed to India under it.
All right. There is also one of the part of the treaties is the advanced sharing as far as the flood information is concerned. We understand both the countries go through this every year. Do you feel that the flood information is disseminated between the 2 countries at the right time, because that is very important, timely dispersion of such information?
Well, so far, I don't recall there being any problems with the timely dispersion of information. But I'm glad you've raised this issue, because the current climate crisis is putting an extreme stress on the glaciers of the Himalayan, Karakoram, and Hindu Kush mountain ranges, which are the origins of all of the rivers of the Indus Basin. There's going to be extreme melting that we're going to see going forward, which is going to release huge amounts of water into the system. And so there is going to be flooding, and therefore it is imperative that this information sharing system be up to date and robust.
All right. Now, when we talk of India's hydroelectric projects on the western rivers, there have been a lot of question marks from the Pakistani side, at least from the Pakistani experts, as to the number of such hydropower projects. I just named one of them. That, of course, you said that there is some kind of an agreement between both the Pakistani and the Indian sides to go and inspect that after the flood season. But what about the other hydroelectric power projects? Do you feel India can construct such projects without asking Pakistan? And if it does so, do you feel it is breaching some kind of an agreement, or it is as per the Indus Water Treaty?
But so far, you see, India hasn't done that. So far, it has timely shared information about its hydropower development projects. And as I said, so far, both countries have complied with the provisions of the Indus Water Treaty. Now, the Pakistani assertion is that a series of dams constructed by India, even if they're small run-of-the-river dams, would, in theory, allow India to be able to control the flow of water on the western rivers in violation of the treaty. Something India says it will never do because it would involve flooding its own territory. I remember speaking with Ramaswamy Iyer once, who used to be India's Water Resources Secretary and often negotiated on the part of India in the Indus Water negotiations. And he informed me that India wouldn't cut off its nose to spite its own face. We must understand that the allegations and concerns Pakistan have and must be seen against the technical limitations of what India can and can't do with hydropower stations. You know, it's our imagination that tells us worst case scenarios. But in reality, you have to understand that the conditions of these dams, the way they operate, the availability of water throughout the year makes it unlikely for any country to be able to flood its own people and territory just for some purpose to spite a neighbor.
All right, Rafay, also let's talk about water scarcity, because this is what also your organization deals with. We, whether it be Pakistan or India, are both dealing with this. We are seeing the amount of water that is available to the common man decreasing with every passing day, and the rains and or the dearth of rains are also contributing to that. Do you feel under this current condition, Pakistan and India both need to work out some kind of a mechanism to store as much water as possible, especially when it rains, or even through, as you said, the melting of the glaciers that is going to happen?
Well, you know, this particular year, the climate crisis has made itself more than known with the heat waves throughout the world that even Pakistan and India have experienced. This is, and mark my words, the coolest summer for the rest of our lives. And in Pakistan, as a result of this heat wave, which started in March, you see, I have to understand, when it gets hot, crops need to be regularly watered, otherwise they will shrivel up and dry. Also, domestic consumption of water goes up because people start drinking more water. So the demand for water increased when the heat wave started in March. However, normally, the water flow in our systems, the waters that melt from our glaciers and come through our rivers and into our systems, usually start melting towards the end of March and April, making water available in the system late April, early May. This year, however, with the heat wave starting in March, there was no water in the system. The Irrigation Department of Punjab informed me that it didn't have water to share for about 10 days in late April, early May. And so this is a serious concern going forward. It doesn't have anything directly to do with the Indus Water Treaty. It certainly has to do with climate change and the sort of concerning lack of availability of water that we're going to face, not just now, but moving forward. And what this does is makes it imperative that not only we conserve water, but we also save and store it. One mechanism or one way of storing water or large amounts of water are what we call surface water irrigation, surface water structures like hydropower dams that we see, which are huge, big storage dams and also produce electricity. Those storage dams can store considerable amounts of water. But that's just one way of storing vast amounts of water. Another way of storing water is to recharge the aquifer by allowing water to fall into the ground and be absorbed into the aquifer, which is another way of also collecting similarly large amounts of water, but with different environmental impacts and different costs. I think Pakistan going forward as a poor country needs really to question whether it needs to invest in multi-billion-dollar hydropower projects, which take a lot of time and are also known to be very expensive and overrun time, when indeed there are sustainable alternatives that are much cheaper, that store equivalent amounts of water and don't disturb or harm the environment like large storage dams do.
Looking forward, in the backdrop of the Indus Water Treaty, Rafay, as well as the water scarcity issues that Pakistan is directly implicated in, what are the measures that you feel Pakistan as a country, Pakistan as a signatory to the Indus Water Treaty, with India or with other nations, needs to move forward with in order to not only conserve water as much as possible? You talked about the alternative solution. I think that is a very, very good idea, and I hope the necessary people are listening to this talk that we're having right now, and I'm sure they must have had this understanding since quite some time. Nevertheless, what in your point of view are the most important things, A, for the government, B, for the common man in Pakistan?
Well, I think firstly, we need to start with understanding that the Indus Treaty was signed in 1960 when technology was limited. We not as technology advanced as we are today. And so it is a treaty between two countries that only deals with the surface water flows over the rivers. We now understand that surface water flows are actually intricately connected with groundwater flows. And a better understanding of water management conjoins the use of both surface water and groundwater, something the Indus Treaty doesn't do. Also, you have to take a step back and look at the third pole, the Himalayan, Hindu Kush and Karakoram glacier and mountain ranges, which are the third largest collection of fresh water on the face of the earth, from where about 9 transboundary rivers transverse through 16 different countries. The issue is not really water scarcity between India and Pakistan. The issue is water scarcity of nearly 2 billion people in South Asia and Far East Asia that are dependent on this third pole. We cannot have a rational management of this third pole when we divide its management just between two countries. There are other riparian states that have rights and interests, and their citizens do too, on these waters, and they include Afghanistan and Bhutan and Nepal and Bangladesh. And so these countries, and China, in a rational world, in a modern world, these riparians would sit together and share the waters of the third pole rather than divide the waters as the Indus Treaty does between India and Pakistan. A sharing system of water control, which is sustainable and meant for the people, is probably the only thing that can see us through the impending climate crisis.
All right, so Rafay, what you mean to say is that this Indus Water Treaty needs to be revisited, and as you talked about the third pole, more and more countries need to be part of maybe a larger extension of the Indus Water Treaty, in which the terms and conditions are, how should I say, redrawn maybe, and a mechanism in order to properly distribute the waters amongst all the member states needs to be assured. This is what you're trying to say, basically.
That is what I'm trying to say. Going forward, because the climate crisis is a pressing crisis, we're going to have water shortages, and dividing a scarce resource is going to lead to conflict. We must learn how to share it.
All right, and I think that that's extremely important. Now, looking back at this Pakistan-India Permanent Indus Commission, looking also at the issues that pertain to both Pakistan and India, which are political in nature, do you feel, despite that, the Indus Water Commission has withheld itself on its own and has contributed to maybe some kind of leeway as far as Pakistan-India cooperation is concerned?
Well, I'm not an expert in international politics, but my understanding of the treaty and how it's been used politically in the last 4 or 5 years, especially with the current government in India, has seen a weaponization of the treaty and repeated attempts to try and find ways in the treaty to somehow harm Pakistan and its interests. Now, we as activists and as academics and as researchers at the Hisar Foundation have kept a close eye on the steps and actual measures that the Indian state may be taking, as opposed to a lot of the political statements that are being made. And I want to make clear that there are political statements being made, but on the ground, there is nothing that is illegal and in violation of the Indus Water Treaty. That said, the current politics and weaponization of the treaty is an unfortunate byproduct of the relationship between India and Pakistan, which, if it can be improved, would probably see a better working relationship on the Indus Treaty itself.
All right, because we see a lot of comments on Twitter on this very Indus Water Treaty and how, quote unquote, as per different Indian experts, India can control the waters and the water flow in Pakistan. Is there any truth to that? Can India control the water flow into Pakistan?
Well, important to remember that the Indus Water Treaty gives the 3 western rivers and its waters to Pakistan, and India is under an obligation to let flow, and those are the words of the treaty, to let flow the waters of the western rivers, provided that they can use them for domestic, limited agricultural and hydropower purposes. Now, those hydropower purposes and the types of dams India can design are strictly laid out in the annexures of the Indus Water Treaty. These are small run-of-the-river structures that have a barrier but basically allow water to pass and do not allow water to be stored. The disputes between India and Pakistan on the Indus Water Treaty, and that's the Baghliyar and the Kishanganga dams, had to do with the design of the dams that India was proposing, which Pakistan argued were of such nature that would have allowed India to control waters to some extent on the western rivers. However, in the Baghliyar case, the design proposed by India was considered a legitimate design given the circumstances of the river and the necessity to repair dams and maintain them. On the other hand, the designs proposed by India in the Kishanganga Dam were held to be in violation of the Indus Water Treaty because there were alternate ways of controlling sedimentation as well. So it's a mixed bag where Pakistan has a strong legal position to be able to object on the types of designs India puts forward. And if any design India puts forward somehow threatens or gives it the ability to control waters or somehow violate its obligation to let flow the waters of the Western rivers, you can be assured that the Pakistani Commission will take the matter up in the dispute resolution mechanism that is contained in the Indus Water Treaty. And again, I reiterate, every time Pakistan and India have raised differences or disputes on the construction of dams, those differences and disputes have been resolved to the satisfaction of both parties.
All right. Final question, Rafay. You talked about the Baghliyar and the Kishanganga dams. Do you feel I know you're not a political analyst, but nevertheless, I'd like your opinion on that. Do you feel that there is an intent from India to construct more such projects, such as these two, that are detrimental that are not in accordance with the Pakistan and the flow of water into our country? And if so, you said that the Pakistani Commission will take care of this. But is there any fear or any apprehension that this might also happen in the future?
You know, it takes close to 10 to 15 years to build a dam and to commission it. You have to find a site that's suitable. You have to clear it of its people. You have to build a road there. You have to create a small colony, and then construction starts. You have to deforest the valley. You have to build the dam. Then you have to fill it up. It takes years and years and years. And while it is true India has proposed a number of hydropower projects on the western rivers, and each one, as it will be sort of started, will go through the treaty inspection process. I might also say that we are ascribing to India such achievements or abilities of organization, as if they can construct these dams without any opposition politically themselves, without any lack of funds, and more importantly, without consideration of the climate crisis. Look, once again, by the middle of this century, global average temperatures will have risen by about 2 degrees compared to pre-industrial levels, and the ICIMOD Mountain Glacier Report of 2019 says that at that level, almost 66, that's 2/3 of the glaciers in the HKH range will have melted, which means that by the time India even finishes these dams, there's not going to be any water in those rivers to provide it the electricity it needs. So any practical and forward-thinking person would really reconsider the option of using hydropower in a climate world and would rely instead on other renewable electricities such as solar and wind, which are going to give you much better return on investments going further, and which are much quicker to commission and which are much less environmentally harmful.
Thank you so very much, Ahmad Rafay Alam, environment lawyer, member Hisar Foundation, which talks on the rational use of water, to have joined us. It was a pleasure having you on board for the very first time in our show at least, and hope to see you much more in the future as well. Thank you very much. This was our first segment. Our second segment, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the extrajudicial killings that have been happening in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Non-stop has been happening since some time, and this is with a deliberate intent to A, scare the people in the occupied valley, B, create an environment where the Indian government and the forces can move forward with all of the moves that they are going forward, so that the Hindus become a majority and the Muslims a minority in this Muslim majority region. More in the following report.
The peace of South Asia has long been held hostage by hegemonic Indian designs in the region laced with majoritarian Hindutva agenda of hardline Hindu nationalists. Decades of braving Indian occupation over Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and resultant oppression, lockdowns, custodial deaths and physical injuries inflicted by Indian occupation troops have failed to dent resolve of Kashmiri youth. In their fresh act of state terrorism, Indian troops have martyred 2 more Kashmiri youth in Pulwama district of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The youth were were martyred by Indian troops and paramilitary forces during a cordon-and-search operation in their bid to intimidate and terrorize Kashmiri freedom fighters. Pakistan has strongly condemned extrajudicial killings of 2 more Kashmiri youngsters, and Foreign Office emphasized that the martyrdom of 9 Kashmiris in the last 4 days, including 2 in Anantnag, 3 in Baramulla district and 4 in Pulwama districts of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, was highly condemnable and part of the unabated, brutal and campaign of oppression against the Kashmiris. According to Kashmir Media Service, more than 609 innocent Kashmiris have so far been martyred by the Indian occupation forces in staged encounters since India's illegal and unilateral actions of August 5, 2019. The escalating repression and brute force in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is a clear manifestation of India using state terrorism as a policy tool against the Kashmiris.
Now, to discuss this very important issue as far as the Indian Hill Valley is concerned, we've been joined by Altaf Hussain Wani Sahab. He's a Kashmiri activist. Altaf Hussain Wani Sahab, thank you very much to have joined us. Wani Sahab, when you look at the extrajudicial killings and the number of those killings, they have exceeded 600 since the abrogation of Article 370 and 35A. When you also look at that and so many other measures that are being put forward by the Indian government and the Indian forces to deliberately minimize the majority of Muslims, or to scare them, or to not give them their due rights. This adds to their vows. Will there be any end to all of this?
Unfortunately, there is no end to this till date. What we have been seeing since late 1989 till this date, the siege and search operations, the extrajudicial killings, the enforced disappearances, rape and harassment, demolition of properties. This has been happening from end of 89 till date. This is normal routine in occupied Kashmir, and during these siege and search operations, crackdowns and raids, the Indian Army kills people, they torture people, they harass people, they demolish their properties at will, because they have the protection under the draconian laws like Armed Forces Special Power Act and others. And if anybody raises voice on these or reports these in current days, when we see if any of the newspapers are not allowed to report this in occupied Kashmir, neither in India. If any of the bloggers or someone who is doing some work on online, they report on this, they face the sedition charges under UAPA.
And they are put under jail.
And they are put under jail. As we see currently, the Fahad Shah, a famous journalist, is behind the bars. And if someone raises this voice and talks to the international community, like Khurram Parvez, an international human rights activist, he is being put behind the bars under UAPA and under the same sedition charges, under the charges which Yasin Malik, the Kashmiri leader, has been awarded the life sentence. And all those leaders who are in, political leaders who are in Tihar jail, they are facing the same charges. And the Indian government is hell-bent on demolishing not only the people's will, but they are hell-bent on erasing all those identities which are concerned to the Kashmiri people, to the Muslim identity of Kashmiris, to their Muslim culture, to their identity, and all that, be that culture, be that language, be that anything that is being erased. And unfortunately, what we have seen, despite international condemnation from the International Civil Society, reports from the International Human Rights Organizations, from the Human Office of the High Commissioner and all that, but Indian government is not showing any grace in order to come to the terms, in order to make some restraint in terms of human rights violations, because that's what we always talk. The international condemnations don't go beyond the account, they don't make India accountable of these crimes, because India was not made accountable of these crimes in the past. It has not been, and currently it is not being held accountable for these. So that is why the Indian government carries these siege and search operations in occupied Kashmir, and in the garb of these siege and search operation. In the month of May, what we see, 45 people were killed, 57 were arrested, 20 were injured, and siege and search operation 30 per day there was one siege and search operation, and each and every place in the Indian occupied Kashmir, and 33 houses and other structures were demolished during this period of time.
Extrajudicial killings, what is the main purpose behind that? And do you feel, you talked about accountability of the Indian government, do you feel that the Indian government will ever be held accountable, and if so, what kind of pressure tactic needs to be put on the Indian government so that they can start this accountability process? Because just in the last 1 week, 2 people in Anantnag, 3 in Baramulla, 4 in Pulwama have been killed in these extrajudicial killings.
You see, this is a rather a method of Indian government, Indian army, and not only this during BJP regime, what we see also in the past regimes, what we see the people who are being, they are taken into custody and thereafter they are being killed and named as militants, and sometimes as foreign militants, sometimes given that name as cross-border terrorism and all that, in order to evade the international condemnation. This has been the main reason behind the India's policy. They always take refuge in that. Now what Indian secret agencies are doing, like in past when they killed the people, they killed some tourists, they even raped the tourist, woman tourists in Kashmir, and then blamed the people of Kashmir, the freedom fighters of Kashmir for that. But thanks to the international, those people, they came up with the stories that it was the Indian forces, not the Kashmiris, who are responsible for this. Similarly, when we talk about the current, they kill now, they themselves, the Indian agents, Indian intelligence agencies, they are people who have been armed by them. They kill now the non-Muslims in Kashmir who are employed there otherwise, and again blame the Kashmiri freedom fighters for this, in order to give India the message, to the Indians the message, the extremist Hindus message, that all Kashmiris are terrorists, thereby making at national level they try to cement their vote bank, but I always call it, they make it more as they made as hashtag of hang Yasin Malik in last month, and they are currently running that hashtag also. And likewise, they say bring those Kashmiris to the west. Now a Kashmiri Pandit group, which is a puppet of the Indian intelligence agencies, they are on that Yasin should be put on the death sentence. This is the way they are doing at national level. At international level, what they did, they tried to muster their support by producing such films which those are controversial in a way, but they were designed to defame the Kashmiri's freedom struggle, and also to involve in one way or the other way that there is some foreign hand involved in it. And they create a sort of sympathy for them at international level, at international audience. Now how to deal with it? You see, each and everything, the strategies that India is doing with all its resources, with all its economic power they have at currently, the way they have the trade relations with the international world, they have used all these resources and their connections with the US and Western world, and also now in some way in the Arab world also, they are making their inroads in order to spread a kind of hate against the Kashmiris, that Kashmiris are the terrorists, they are the people, they don't listen to the reason, they listen only to the gun and all that, and that we have every right to suppress their movement through use of force.
You talk of the suppression, Vani Sahib, doesn't it remind you a little bit about what used to happen during the Nazi rule? These films like Kashmir Files and others that are now being, distributed openly, and they flame and they fan hatred of the Kashmiris, of the Muslims, and Yasin Malik is named in the Kashmir Files. Don't you feel that there is a parallel between what happened in the times of the Nazis and now what is happening in India? Do you feel that the Indian regime is taking inspiration from that as far as, perpetrating these abuses, these brutalities on the Kashmiris and on the Muslims is concerned?
Not only taking the lead from that, but they have extended beyond that, because in today's world, at that time, you will have to go for a VCR to see a film and all that, all these things, and there was no direct bombardment of information at that time. What Indians are using, only yesterday there was an article in even the Indian Hindustan Times. There's an article that how Hindutva extremists have their outlets in different parts of United States of America. It is there. And when these people bombard the information, the fake information, when they bombard it again and again, and there is no counter argument for that, that becomes a reality then. Then the audience thinks it is true. And that is what India is doing. Because in Nazi time, it was not possible to disseminate information in that way and to reach the audience so quickly. But today it is in just in a second's time. You social media, you can put it anywhere, and along with that, Indians, as we have we all know about the EU disinfo, what they did in past, and they are doing it currently also in different pretexts. So India is continuing to do it all. Unfortunately, when we try to do it, when we Kashmiris try to do it, we try to send the real information to the international world. One of of whom I talked about, the Khurram Parvez. Khurram Parvez was a link between the United Nations human rights mechanisms and the people of Kashmir. He was the one who used to document all those human rights violations on the ground, but of the reprisals, because there were many of the condemnations from the United Nations human rights system and from the special rapporteurs to the government of India that this thing has happened, this thing has happened, this thing has happened. They thought this man is doing all this, and that man has been put behind bars and he is facing sedition. But others who try to do it, if we try to do from here, other people do from different countries, their accounts are blocked. Only in the last month you heard that 260 YouTube channels and other channels from Pakistan were blocked in India. And likewise, they are doing each and be it Facebook, be it Twitter, be it LinkedIn, other things. They are on each and everywhere. They are mastering this time, this soft power, which we say, and by that way, they are controlling each and everything. They don't allow us to disseminate information. In Indian occupied Kashmir, anybody who disseminates any information, he is seditious.
Even if he upload a single picture,
his account is being suspended, or he is being asked, called for questioning by the police, and he is being harassed by the police. He is shown that you have uploaded this. If you will do it again, you will be fired for this. And we have seen even the government servants, till date, some 200 government servants have been terminated from the services because of using the social media, because of showing sympathy to the martyrs, showing sympathy to those who were killed in extrajudicial execution, showing sympathy to those women who are there waiting for their loved ones, showing sympathy for a girl who has been raped or whose father or husband is killed. But for that purpose, they have been terminated from the service, and there is no right to appeal for them. And now hundreds and thousands of state employees of Indian occupied Kashmir, especially Muslims, which account 480,000 almost, they are all on the surveillance list. Their accounts are being surveillanced, and they are being checked, and they are time and again being questioned for that if they upload anything. So in order that I think a lot of measures need to be taken from ourselves, from the government.
I mean, let's talk about the lot of measures and the right of the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, the right to live a normal life, the right for them to go out and talk about their rights to self-determination, or the rights to live however they please to live. That right is being denied to them, not since now, but since decades. Now, I'll refer to what our Foreign Office spokesperson said very recently, and he urged the international community to play its role to facilitate a just and peaceful resolution of the Jammu and Kashmir issue. Will that ever happen?
You see, we must be optimistic that everything is possible in this world. Nothing is impossible. Everything is possible, but you need a lot of efforts for that, a lot of sacrifice for that, a lot of resource for that, in order to convince the international world, in order to pressurize the international world, in order to make every year each and every person who is in a position who can make some difference. So for that purpose, perseverance is the biggest
yes. True,
major
true.
which is to be done. I'm thankful to recently when our foreign minister was in United States, he articulated his argument very powerfully over there. That's a very just argument, but I think he has to be everywhere and speak to every person like that purpose. All those people who are responsible for it, they will have to speak for it, they will have to write for it, they will have to provide those opportunities for all those people so that they can talk about Kashmir, they can talk about the reality of Kashmir, what Kashmir actually is. People, the international audience should not be led at the mercy to listen and to watch what Indians say, what Indians show them.
And India is painting a totally different picture of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, whether it be visually, whether it be through pictures. They post a very sane picture of the valley. In fact, the truth is quite the opposite of that. When Pakistan, Wani Sahab reiterated its call on the international community to hold India accountable for the violent human rights abuses, will the international community respond at any given time? We know, we understand that they register what Pakistan has been saying time and again since so many years on all the different fora possible. But will there ever be a reaction? I also understand that there is a geopolitical rivalry going on in the region, and this is why India is being let go of with many of the things that it is doing. Will there be ever some kind of a police mechanism for India to stop doing what it is?
See, I think I don't see there can be a mechanism better than the UN mechanism is already there, which has to be evolved, which has to be talked about, which has to be used to expose India. But at the same time, I will say that you see what India is doing currently in Kashmir, the way they are doing in Kashmir, what the picture they are painting at the international level about Kashmir, about Pakistan. We have to be more sensitive about it, how we can give a proper response to it. The international community, I think Pakistan is a big nation, Pakistan is a big country, but at the same time, when we see the Indians have at the current time controlled the information. The information is the biggest tool at this time.
True.
You need not to conquer any place through physical means. You are there to conquer it through information. They are spreading the misinformation in Pakistan. They are spreading the misinformation,
propaganda
against Pakistan, in Pakistan, and also out. So what we need actually, how Pakistan can influence the international community. First of all, we need a political stability in Pakistan. First and foremost is a political stability in Pakistan. All the stakeholders, all the political parties of Pakistan, they have to see that Pakistan is first. If there is stability in Pakistan, Pakistan will prosper. There will be more foreign opportunities of foreign investment in Pakistan. People will come to invest in Pakistan. People will see the Pakistan by themselves, and they will paint a better picture of Pakistan at the international level. They will come themselves to see what actually is happening into Kashmir. But for that purpose, we have to provide an opportunity to those audiences so that we have a political stability and we have all the domestic fronts conquered, and only then we can do better in the foreign relations and we can make some difference at the international level.
Let's hope for that, Wani Saab, and let's hope that some kind of a just resolution comes. Pakistan has been saying that time and again through the Foreign Office and through its different fora, through our Prime Ministers, through our Foreign Ministers, just like Bilawal Bhutto Zardari Saab, as you rightly pointed out when he was in the United States. But what is also needed is an independent investigation by United Nations Commission of Inquiry inquiry, as has been recommended by the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights in its 2018 and 2019 reports. And that is what is needed, and that is what will also unearth the truths about what India and the Indian force and the Indian government is perpetrating in the Indian Hill Valley. Thank you very much, Altaf Hussain Wali Sahab, Kashmiri leader, to have joined us, to have talked to us about the extrajudicial killings in the Hill Valley and also so much more that India is perpetrating in the Hill Valley. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Let's come to our last two stories very quickly. The first is about 4 Pakistanis that have made it to the Forbes under 30 list for this year, that is 2022. I'll name these 4 people one by one. Durre Aziz Amna, she's an author whose writings are inspired by her experiences. She's a graduate of Yale College and an alumni of University of Michigan's Helen Zell Writers Program. Her debut novel, American Fever, is all set for an autumn release. The second is Zain Ahmad. He is a designer who has co-founded the Pakistani streetwear fashion label Rasta in 2018. Many of the celebrities have been wearing what he has designed. Then the third is Muhammad Salman. He has co-founded Bridge Links, which is a tech startup that connects manufacturers and exporters in Pakistan with truckers and private fleets. And of course, the fourth is Shawana Shah. She has co-founded the Hawa Lure, which is a platform that aims to provide social and economic help to women, young girls and transgender individuals who have been a victim of sexual and gender-based violence. She has also been awarded the Muhammad Ali Humanitarian Award in 2016. Congratulations to all 4 of you to have joined the Forbes 30 under 30 list. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, today is also a very important day. Today is Global Parents Day 2022. The theme of this day is appreciate all parents throughout the world. Since the last few years, United Nations has been celebrating this day to make the children understand the importance of parents, the role that they play in nurturing the children, in bringing them up, all the difficulties that they have to go through in order to raise their children in a proper way, to make them go to the right schools, to make them better individuals, so that they can, grow up to be better individuals and also play their due role in the society today. Thus, as I always say, as every day needs to be the day when you honor your parents, whether it be your mother or your father, honor them, cherish them and understand them for all the hard work that they have been putting to raise you as children. So of course, today is that day, but I think every day should be that day. With that, we come to an end of today's Newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with news story segments that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. Stay safe and follow the regular protocols as far as the communicable diseases are concerned. Allah Hafiz.